Alright, this video is for Biljana Ivanišević, and I probably murdered that, and I'm sorry. But the basics is, I think the first and foremost thing that he's having a problem with is his background, middle ground, foreground, and there's perspective issues in here too, some things like that. So I'm going to just kind of go over some things that will help you out. The background is fine. You're using this kind of weird brush to kind of blur the edges, and in all reality, these edges wouldn't be that blurred. They'd be a lot more kind of straight and narrow and solidified, especially as it gets higher, because fog itself only has fog itself doesn't rise very high. It's not clouds. And so that is the first thing that I would say right off the bat is just tighten up some of the line work here in this, especially in the foreground elements, because that's going to really push that aspect of foreground, middle ground, background. So I think the number of trees is fine. The big thing is, especially in the foreground, you want to get much more crisp and more layers. And what I would say to do is let me try this first. The first thing I'm going to do is just kind of select her out of the scene. And something like this. Okay. So that being said, the first thing that I would do is I would take your colors here, and if you want, so an example is you want this to be defined much more clearly, and so I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to invert it, and I'm going to grab this, like your brighter color here, and oops, that is so not the right gradient. Let's use this gradient here. So by doing this as layers, you're going to get a little bit better definition of your character. I probably didn't need to go that dark, but the next thing is this here, and we're just going to kind of invert this and go here, grab a lot less opacity, and kind of, so what you're doing is essentially adding in layers of fog. I can also do something like this. And let's actually add a little bit of this, and then here we're just gonna like so. All right, so by adding these layers in there and cleaning up some of this, putting a little bit more of this fog in there, you're going to get much more depth of field going on. And then the other thing too is, get your perspective in there. Right now, what you've got is this kind of this tight looking sarcophagus or crypt or whatever. And the problem that you're having is that this it's kind of just like an afterthought. if you're going to put something like that in there, I would, change it in your composition. So I would actually add in, maybe see, it's kind of creating a tangent, and it just doesn't feel like it belongs in there. And I think honestly, I would dump it. I think dumping this sarcophagus um, is going to help you out quite a bit more. Especially if you want that idea that she's in a graveyard, or things like that, then um, what I would say to do right off the bat is let's just do this. I think I have one of my. There we go. So what I would do is to kind of give the idea that you're in a graveyard, um, put in more objects in there. That basically entails, putting in tombstones, giving me silhouettes and ideas of different aspects of what's going on in there. And they don't even have to be full aspects. They just have to kind of give the illusion that things are in there, and then get your perspective in there. And I think that's going to help you out a lot more. The other aspect too is her. This is the brightest focal point on her, and that's almost like there's sun reflecting off of her, and it wouldn't be that bright. Honestly, what I would tell you to do is almost add in a new layer with a kind of a bluish gradient in there, something like that. And then let's put this as let's put it as like a multiply, and kind of build that up. And you can see how by doing that, now she starts popping out a little bit more, and you don't have this bright sky going on. The other aspect is, going in here and cleaning up this line work here, giving this hard, defined edges, and so on and so forth, because she's on that foreground layer, and so is all this stuff. So putting this in here is a huge aspect. And then use this light to kind of um, basically give me the idea of what's going on. So what I would do is, again, get these darks in here, and get the idea that this is the foreground element in here. And this is a little bit too dark, of course, but especially since it's set on multiply, I probably could erase a little bit of this and give it, but you want those hard contrasts too. So that being said, then what I would do is start working on her as an element of a little bit more element of depth. It's very dark here, and I get you want to kind of draw this eye in there, but even without that, this is where my eye is drawing, because darks draw the eye just as well as lights do. So I'm fighting between this bright pink, this dark, and this dark here. So what I would do is give her a little bit more shadow, um, and give more light according to. So what I would do is kind of a screen here, and we'll grab some of this light. And if you want that light on there, brighten that up, and then that's going to give you kind of a highlight for her where she's at. Um, things like that. And then you can use the darks to kind of unify the scene. I probably want to go a little bit darker, and that's going to give me much more shadow and light information. Like so. And then you can also use the lights to kind of light the steps and give me kind of this idea of that there's light here, and it's fighting for the shadow information. So, and if you don't want that, then I would, then you can completely dump this and concentrate more on her silhouette by giving her shadows a lot darker in the foreground elements. And then if you want, so it would be more like this, where she's the darker element. And then if you want those brights, which I'm going to grab from here, if you want those brights, you can simply start adding rim lighting behind the character to give it that morning sunset look. So, and it depends on what you're going for and kind of where you want. But now that backlighting, and I really recommend reference. Get your photo of, even if it's yourself as backlighting, you'll get a lot of the information. The hand too, I'm going to show you this. The hand here is bent kind of awkward to the side. If you put your hand in that same position, it's really uncomfortable. And so what you want to do instead is her hand would actually be bent something like this. So foreground, and it's coming forward, so you want to add that foreground element like this, which is going to kind of change the whole breast and shoulder information. And then what you want to do is it's going to wrap up here like so, and then to bend the wrist that way is it's going to be a more forward motion. So the hands are going to wrap around more here, and then the thumb is going to be over more. So really get some photo reference for that angle too. It's where you're having issues is this seam here. The seam here makes it look like it's from the side, whereas instead you want to create the elbow, create the jut of the bone here, and then around and up. So though it's little details like that. And then I don't know what's going on with her arm. If you want her to be an amputee, or if it's like I really can't tell what's going on with it. It feels like you're trying to do something with it, but it's convoluted. So clear that up a little bit. Like I said, the best thing I would tell you to do is get some photo reference and set up your lighting, and a lot of your information is going to come into play. So that's kind of where I would go with it if I were to kind of work on fixing things like that. The perspective, if you get rid of this sarcophagus here, the perspective on it is fine. When you put that sarcophagus in there, the problem is the perspective, it just feels jarred because you're creating a tangent with this here, and so you really want to get rid of that. All right, I hope that helps.